Oh, didn't see you come in. Hey everyone, Anime MacGyver here again. Well, I realize it's been quite a long time since my countdown on the top 11 Nostalgia Critic jokes, and so I decided, well, let's do another countdown. Recently I've been feeling very nostalgic towards my early anime shows. Now, if you've watched my Chamberlain Court Q&A videos, you'll recall that Dragon Ball Z was my very first anime, even long before I learned the concept of anime and where it came from, etc., etc. But very few people don't know this, but my second anime that came after Dragon Ball Z was actually Pokémon.
Ah yes, Pokémon. Just saying the title alone brings back fond memories. I used to watch the anime a lot, just as much as I did Dragon Ball Z, at least until approximately Season 3. I don't know, it's sort of a blur as to when during Pokemon's anime run, and I used to enthusiastically collect the trading cards. Granted, I only play the trading card games maybe once or twice, and another downside was that I never actually did play the Game Boy games, but I had seen enough of them to get the jokes from Smosh's Pokemon in real life videos, which I enjoyed. And for that matter, I never actually did play the N64 games, although I do remember playing Pokemon Snap a few times, but not much more. What Dragon Ball Z lacked in terms of things for me to get a hold of to collect at the time, Pokemon made up for that. So with all things considered, I'm going to be counting down my top 11 favorite Pokemon. Bear in mind that, yes, these selections are from Generation 1 because, well, as I said before, I started to lose interest in the show and in the card collecting when they went beyond 151 Pokemon. 152 if you count Missing No from the Game Boy games, which I don't. Also, bear in mind that these aren't what I consider to be the greatest Pokemon either, that these are just my personal favorites. So if none of your favorites are on this list, please try not to take it personally. In fact, I'd like to hear some of your favorites in the comments of this video. So let's catch them all for this countdown.
What? Even I couldn't resist that.
Number 11. Diglett. This Pokemon's classified as a mole Pokemon, but even as a kid I thought to myself, it doesn't look anything like a mole, other than the fact that it digs and I want to whack it at a carnival game. But that aside, I've always liked this little Pokemon for its simplicity, charm, and mystery. I mean, think about it. Nobody really knows what Diglett or even Dugtrio look like other than their heads. Do they have arms, legs? How did they beat the crap out of Arbok and Weezing when they were in their holes? Nobody knows! And while I could make a genitalia joke, I'm gonna choose not to for the sake of good taste. Also, is it just me, or do Diglett resemble the backgrounds of Super Mario World? Not much more to say about Diglett, but sometimes simplicity is better. Number 10. Snorlax. If anyone's ever told you that it's hard to get fat on a vegan diet, I think Snorlax would probably have you dead wrong, considering that it can eat thorn bushes and other types of vegetation. This is one of those Pokemon that's kind of hard to describe why I like it so much. I mean, it's very lazy and can block your way in the game and requires you to buy a Pokeflute to wake it up. It's very heavy, weighing in over 1,000 pounds. But with all that considered, I think that's what I like about this Pokemon, is that it's the type of Pokemon that shouldn't be underestimated and has a wide pain threshold and can body slam very effectively. Back in the N64 days when my friend Jesse and I would play Super Smash Bros. On his N64, it was always fun for me to unleash Snorlax from the Pokeballs and use against him. Snorlax. Its name may sound like a terrible idea for a laxative, but can definitely body slam its way to victory if the opportunity presents itself. Number 9. Evie. I think this is the only Pokemon to my knowledge in which its name is a palindrome, you know, words that spell the same forward and backwards. What I like about this Pokemon was that it gave you 3 options as to which version did you want to evolve it into, depending on what elemental stone you used. A Vaporeon if you wanted a water type, Jolteon if you wanted an electric type, and a Flareon if you wanted a fire type. Oh, and if I don't mention it, someone will. In the later generations, you do have the option to evolve your Eevee into other variations such as Esperon, Umbreon, Leafeon, and Glaceon. But since I never did go into the later generations, I'm just going to stick with the first 3 I mentioned. Eevee was the type of Pokemon that always seemed to have 3 potential trump cards up its sleeve instead of 1, if you ever got into a bind with it. Like Snorlax, it's also not the type to underestimate. Not much more to say about Eevee except I just loved the possibilities that came out of this Pokemon. Number 8. Vileplume. Out of all the grass and flower type Pokemon, Vileplume was the only one that really stood out to me, because at first I thought it was a mushroom type, but as I learned a bit later on, Vileplume was actually based on an exotic plant that smells of rotten meat to attract and eat flies, though for the life of me I can't remember what the name of that plant is. That aside, from a trainer's standpoint, it's always good to expand on your Pokemon's arsenal, so to speak, to give it variety. And yes, that includes grass Pokemon. Violin can give off toxic pollens, which at first doesn't seem like much, but sometimes it's the little things that can go a long way. Number 7. Blastoise. This holographic Pokemon card, along with the holographic Venusaur and Charizard, were definitely a part of my collection when I was 10 years old. It was a tough call as to between him, Venusaur, or Charizard. Ultimately, I chose Blastoise because while Charizard was awesome in terms of firepower capabilities, the flame on its tail was pretty much its Achilles heel and one that could cost it its life, which is something I wouldn't want in the long run if it was pitted against a water-type Pokemon. I'd much rather go with a water Pokemon that didn't have an easy weakness that costed its life, almost like blowing out birthday candles. I remember reading somewhere that Blastoise had the capability of filling up Olympic-sized swimming pools with its water cannons. Overall, Blastoise proves that sometimes the firepower of Charizard isn't all that it's cracked up to being. Number 6. Hitmonchan. A punching Pokemon that comes fit with boxing gloves to rival Hitmonlee's kicking style. This is a Pokemon that Rocky Balboa would love to have if he ever took a Pokemon train as a hobby on the side. Speaking of which, Adrian! Adrian! Sorry, I couldn't resist. Out of all the fighting-type Pokemon, I've always liked Hitmonchan because there's something iconic and distinguishing about the fact that it's a boxer, which as far as I know is not something you commonly see in anime. Sure, we see martial artists and street fighters in anime, but we rarely see boxers. To put it simply,
she floats like a butterfly and stings like when I pee.
Come to think of it, I wonder why Pokemon never did their take on Muhammad Ali's quote. They could have easily had someone say, "She floats like a butterfly and stings like a bee." I'm sure some of you probably feel the same way, but then again, I'm totally overanalyzing here. Not much more to say about this Pokemon except Hitmonchan's just one of those Pokemon that's sort of a reminder of like why boxing's cool. Number 5. Pidgey.
Oh, Pidgey! Yeah!
You didn't let me finish. I was gonna say Pidgeotto.
You stupid jackass!
This bird Pokemon was pretty awesome to see it fly, fight, and create whirlwind and tornado attacks. This bird Pokemon, along with Pidgey and Pidgeot, were like the original airbenders of the Pokemon universe, and this was years before Avatar: The Last Airbender came out. A flying Pokemon like Pidgeotto is very important to have because you may never know when you could find yourself stuck in the wilderness and have no other means of contacting for help. With a bird like Pidgeotto, you could easily use him like a carrier pigeon. Hell, it could be the next Cher-ami. It's a World War I reference, look it up, people. All in all, I always liked Pidgeotto because it's better to have a Pokemon like Pidgeotto and not need him for those sorts of emergencies than the other way around. Number 4. Gengar. Oh yes, you didn't think I'd leave out one of the 3 ghost Pokemon from the creepy and unsettling Lavender Town, did you? Out of the trio of ghost Pokemon, I've always liked Gengar the most because it has arms and legs, and according to its card, under a full moon it can resemble your shadow and laugh at your fright. Now, I like to scare people from time to time. I can avoid being seen if I wish, but to disappear entirely, that is a rare gift, but a common one to a ghost Pokemon. While the horror genre is my least favorite in terms of TV shows and movies, having it around once in a blue moon in something like Pokemon is actually kinda nice. Huh, this is actually shorter than I expected. Well, listen to a little bit more of the Lavender Town theme so I can torment you that way. Number 3. Lapras. If you ever want a water-type Pokemon that can take you across the sea without having to rely on the disastrous cruise of the RMS St. Anne, go with a Lapras. To put it simply, Lapras is like a cross between the Loch Ness Monster and a Yoshi. And much like a Yoshi, it's very adorable and likable, and I've always wanted to travel on the back of a Lapras. Ah, Lapras. Looking back on this Pokemon, I wish I had nicknamed it the Sea Yoshi when I was a kid. Number 2. Ninetales. This fox Pokemon to me always embodied grace, majesty, intelligence, and ferocity. The hell with Shippo's Foxfire, this fire fox could easily whoop Shippo's ass any day. Then again, just about any Pokemon could whoop Shippo's ass. This Pokemon's very beautiful to look at, but piss it off and you'll experience
flash of light, searing pain, then poof! You're nothing more than a pile of ash.
Ninetales is a damn good reminder that sometimes Ninetales are better than 6 from a Vulpix. Hey, that rhymes. And my number 1 favorite Pokemon is Pikachu. I know, I'm sorry for being predictable here, people, but I can't help it.
Because it's so goddamn cute!
I've always liked this Pokemon, and it's kinda hard not to like him. In fact, if it wasn't for Pikachu, there'd be a 75% chance that I might not have gotten into the franchise to begin with. Remember those old Pokémon commercials just before the anime debuted in America? Well, I still to this day remember that they played a certain amount of anime footage, such as this one, and seeing him and Ash in that one shot from the commercial got me intrigued. Pikachu's appeal and iconography coupled with the image of him and Ash was pretty much what got me into Pokemon. But that's not the only reason why he's my #1 favorite. Back in the N64 days when Jesse and I would play Super Smash Bros., Pikachu was one of my most played characters other than Yoshi and Luigi at the time. And I used to love using Thunder. God, that was my favorite move. I was around Ash's age when the anime came out in America, and I could see myself in the character's shoes and would have loved to start out with a Pikachu. Assuming that it didn't shock me, potentially giving me cardiac arrest because it was misbehaving at first. To me, having Pikachu by your side is like having a loyal cat or dog with you to protect you when you're in danger, to keep you company when you're lonely, and to lighten the mood when things look bleak. All in all, a Pokemon with this much potential and versatility in more ways than one is all the more reason why Pikachu is beyond any doubt my favorite Pokemon.
Loyalty, honor, a willing heart. I can ask no more than that.
And so folks, that was my countdown on my favorite Pokemon. Thank you so much for joining me and sharing this trip with me down memory lane. As I said before, I'm sure you have your own opinions on your favorite Pokemon, so go out there, share them, and see what other people have to say about them, regardless of what generation they're from. Thanks for watching.
Oh, and one thing occurred to me looking back on first generation Pokemon. The 24th Pokemon is Arbok, which is Cobra spelled backwards, and is the evolved form of Ekans, also spelled backwards for snake. And this year, 2013, is the year of the snake, and I will be turning 24 this year, because I stated before that I was born the year of the snake. How's that for an interesting connection?